and they pretend to fight against authoritarian or totalitarian regimes, being themselves radically totalitarian. That is a kind of Orwellian paradox, and everybody waited, expected, everybody expected totalitarian system from socialism and nationalism, and that was the case historically. That was the case, but liberalism was exempt from that, and now something paradoxical is happening. So the liberalism is globalist liberalism is more totalitarian than any other political situation, and Putin stays against that, stands against that, and Putin tries to preserve regional, if you want, traditional values, regional interests of Russia against globalist agenda. In that sense, Putin is leading figure, an example type to imitate to other emerging leader of all other poles. So that is the foundation of the friendship with Xi Jinping, the leader of China, the Modi, the leader of India, and the leaders of Islamic world. So Putin is a kind of example to follow to all the leaders of the world that try to save the sovereignty, the plurality, the real democracy. And I think that in that sense, when they compared Trump and Putin being totally different politically, ideologically, by their history, historical and economical background, but they had some, and they have some common features. They are real.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Donald Trump forcing vaccines on people or suggesting that people get them, responsible for killing people, warp speed, I agree with you in your analysis. I think that both of these presidents, both of these leaders care about their countries. But it was interesting to me to hear you say, when you were talking about Xi Jinping and the Ayatollah and Vladimir Putin, in the West, if you believe in that construct, our media, Rothschild, Vanguard, BlackRock controlled media, everybody that's viewing this program has been led to believe, propagandized, programmed into believing that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin and Iran are the bad guys, and that we are at war with these countries because these countries are adversarial to us and they want to kill us. Meanwhile, our own government has been responsible for killing us internally for all of these years. And so when you step back and watch what happened with the original confrontation in Ukraine, and I will just tell you, just candidly, I got some phone calls from some people that were on major broadcast news networks after I observed what was happening between Russia and Ukraine originally. And I said these things. I said, these are arbitrary borders that were established after Vladimir Lenin's color revolution. Most of the people in Ukraine, or at least more than half of them, are actually ethnic Russians that would just prefer to be Russia. And so what you have here is the United States military-industrial complex, a murderous regime, breaking its promise by expanding NATO, a force designed for one purpose only, which is to fight Russia, continuing to break that promise, renege on that promise, and then put pressure on the Russian people and Vladimir Putin, who is the protector of his people. Is that an accurate assessment?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Ukraine as a united nation or state never existed. So the parts of these territories were under Polish government, the other part or under Austrian government, and the major part was the part of Russia, historical Russia. And unification of Ukraine was a kind of purely administrative decision that was not based on the historical heritage, his linguistic unity, cultural unity. That was totally purely administrative decision to unite the different part with different group of population, with the majority of Russian speaking and considering themselves to be the part of Russian people. Historically,
so these ethnic Russians that were in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin actually sent aid to them, transport options to them. Most of those people that were trying to flee Ukraine at the beginning of this conflict have now ended up in mass graves in the Donbass. Who's responsible for that?
It is obvious that all that was provocation from the globalists, not from the Americans, not from the Europeans, from globalists, because that is the kind of the geopolitical effort to save unipolarity at any price. Because
can we just get down to brass tacks, Mr. Douguine? Who are the globalists that you're speaking of? Can you name names?
So, for myself, for example, the clear example of globalists, they are the people from CFR, Council on Foreign Relations. Historically, that from the end of the First World War, that was the idea to transmit the globalist vision of British Empire to the Americans, and the Council on Foreign Relations was created then, after the end of the First World War by Wilson. And Wilsonian politics was precisely beginning of this globalist turn of United States of America, and that was inside American establishment, making more and more power with the global elite, with the transnational corporations, and in the end of the 70s, in the 80s, the Trotskyists from far left groups entered in the American politics, in the Democratic Party, and after that in the Republican Party, and they are known now as neoconservatives. That was the second pillar of the globalism. So two organizations, if you want, two clubs in United States, the older CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, cooperation of the globalists. They wanted to make America global, and but Buchanan has said once, we Americans, we have won the world, but we have lost ourselves. That is very correct description of the situation. So thanks to this globalist, the America was abandoned in favor of the chimeric dream of the global rule. So global democracy, one world government, that was a kind of plan. And now in the manuals of international relations, you can easily read the plans of global governments. It is not conspiracy theory. It is the part of the normal manuals of international relations, and that has a name: Liberalism in International Relations. That is a school of liberals in international relations, and that is a kind of ideology, that is a kind of international progressist ideology, basing on the transnationalist corporation, the richest families that rule global finance, and corporate organization, and the second pillar is this neoconservative. They coincide with their will to global dominance, and they coincide in their transcendency regarding America as a state, America as a nation, America as the society. They transform all the world in something totally new. So traditional relations between the sexes, between the genders, male, female, that was normal for all culture, liberal.
Yeah, so speak to that. I mean, you're a highly regarded, very well celebrated author and tremendous thinker. This is where I become a little perplexed, and this is why, Mr. Douguine, sometimes it's frustrating to be in a position as a host, or to try to show people, things that they're missing. And I guess my biggest conundrum here is this: we have a population in our country, in the United States, where, and probably across the face of the planet, where there are conservative-minded Christians who are flying Ukrainian flags in their front yards. They are gladly sending donations to NGOs and nonprofits to send aid to Ukraine. They know nothing about this country other than what Fox News has told them, or CNN, or MSNBC, or the New York Times, or the Washington Post. They know nothing about Ukraine. They know nothing about Vladimir Zelensky. How many wives does he have in his name this week? I mean, even his name is fake. This guy's been installed. There is neo-Nazi war criminals gunning down innocent people, killing dogs and anything with a pulse that tries to flee. But there's a total disregard for any of this. And Americans, largely blindly, will just follow these military interventions. We are convinced as a people, not me, generally speaking, we must defend Ukraine against the boogeyman, Vladimir Putin, and against evil Russia. We must defend Israel, our greatest ally, against, Hamas or the Palestinians, and then advocate for and support the carpet bombing of innocent children inside of Gaza and now the Strip. We just bombed Syria the other day. We're getting ready to posture towards China to defend Taiwan, another country that matters not to the national security or the sovereignty or the prosperity of the American people. People around their dinner tables here, Mr. Douguine, don't give a damn, quite frankly, about what happens in Taiwan or in Ukraine or in Israel. Gaza. So why are these people so easily influenced? How does that take place? What kind of psychological operations, in your opinion, are running on a global scale in lockstep with world leaders? And that includes, by the way, throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the genetic sequence biowarfare, gain-of-function virus that was intentionally deployed on a global population. By the way, as noted by a top biowarfare general, Kirillov, for Vladimir Putin's government, he actually cited my program and showed the data about the weapons of biowarfare, the pegylated lipid nanoparticles encapsulated in hydrogel that were forced on billions of people across the planet, where it's my opinion that if these billions of people knew what they did to themselves, there'd be no safe place for the people who perpetuated this evil to hide. What kind of global lockstep governance has taken place here, and who is at the top of it? Who's responsible for dictating to so-called leaders of sovereign countries across the planet that this is the narrative they're going to follow, this is what the media is going to say, and whoever is a dissenting voice against it will be jailed or killed? Who's responsible for this?
Oh, that in order to answer this very, very large question, we need to make a kind of inquiry in the genealogy of the modern society, modern world. We should understand that the modernity, the modern age, began with anti-Christian revolution in the science. It was materialism in science, and the natural science, and the human science, political science. That was a kind of great rebellion of in the Western Europe against tradition, against the church, against Middle Ages, against established dogma and rules. And there was the origin of the modern nihilism that pretended to create, to build, to establish the new kind of culture, of society, of political system, of science, on the negation, total denial of any being to the Christian norms. That started with the Protestant reforms, and that was and after that was secularization of Protestantism itself, as Max Weber shows in his books, and that was the progressivism. And materialism, atheism, secularization, they led step by step affirmation of liberal ideology. What is liberal ideology? Liberal ideology, that is idea to liberate individual from any kind of collective identity, starting with the church, state, nation, and now with gender and human being as such, because to be human is collective identity. That is a kind of ideology, and this kind of ideology of progressism based from the beginning of the modernity, from the 16th century, maybe earlier than that, that was based on the refuse of the Christian values, of Christian tradition based on the evangel, on the Bible, on the sacralization of the state, of the rule, of the estates, of the families, and so on and so on. So that was the progress. And there were two branches of this progressism. First of all, liberal one, and the second, communist. And after the end of the communist time, the only progressism we have is liberal progressism. So the idea to finish this agenda, this mission to liberate the human being or individual, to liberate individual from any kind of collective identity, that is a hidden ideology of the Western modernity.
Is Vladimir Putin rejecting that ideology?
Yes, now
okay.
Yes.
And so when did he kick the Rothschilds criminal central banking cabal out of his country and reject that?
So we just in the beginning of this ideological revolution, because Putin wanted in the beginning to preserve Russian sovereignty, nothing else.
What leader should look for anything else?
Yes, but little by little he has discovered this seriousness of the situation, that the Western modernity now is in its
a satanic cabal. Let's just call it what it is. It's a satanic cabal, and he's recognized that. So, he said that in front of the United Nations General Assembly. He said this on a world stage, largely ignored, by the way, by the press. Unless you watch the Stu Peters network, you would never know that Vladimir Putin is saying these things. But he has rejected the force of the one world governance that is fastly approaching and slaughtering everything in its way, including innocent children of God.
Yes, and what we see now, we are normally we are habituated. Normally we consider this progressism with the eyes of progressists themselves. So we see this process as something, as a good development, the amelioration, more comfort, more goods, and so on. But if we stare, if we look at that, upon this process with the eyes of Christian, we see Antichrist, we see all the signs of Satan. So I think that people who are the leading power of the globalist movement are precisely the kind of servants of Satan, and they are maybe conscious, maybe not conscious, half conscious.
They're in league with Satan, whether they like it, know it, choose to admit it or not. That's who these people are, and they're doing the bidding of the devil himself. They are his minions.
Absolutely, because the modernity started with denial of existence of God and Satan, and now the Satan is back. And Satan clearly manifests that was he who persuaded, who convinced the Western society and from Western Europe, all the rest of humanity, to believe that God doesn't exist. So, and now we have no God anymore, but we have Satan that has returned. And
I have like 4 minutes left here, Dr. Douguine, and I just gotta. There are millions of people that are going to view this interview. And I think that one of the most important things that I'd like for you to address, and I'm going to give you the floor here, the Western press is going to call me a Russian sympathizer. They're going to call me a Russian asset and a Russian propagandist. I'm the leading propagandist for Vladimir Putin in the United States. I'm a bought and paid for, mouthpiece for the Kremlin. Absolutely not true. I've never met him, although be it I would be honored to, and I'd love to sit down with Mr. Putin. But the idea that Vladimir Putin, with his KGB ties and the history there, to his ruthless dictatorship and the way that he rules over his people is contrary to the amount of support that is obvious that he gets. I watch his rallies. He has several 100,000 people there. People love him. They're waving the flags. They're cheering him on. Similar to here, leading up to the election in 2020, you had 12 people showing up for a Joe Biden pedophile rally, and you had 65,000 people showing up at Donald Trump's rallies, with another 40,000 waiting outside that couldn't get in, and millions tuning in on live television. Can you speak to the popularity of President Putin and why you think it is the press's number one objective, controlled by Vanguard and BlackRock and Rothschilds and the Zionist lobby, the globalist empire, the murderous regime that we're talking about? Why is it so important for Vladimir Putin to be framed as this boogeyman and to lock up President Trump and to demonize Stu Peters and my network and to silence you? Why is it so important for these people to make sure that Americans support a kinetic confrontation with Russia?
I think that American population, American support, American society is under hypnosis. It is manipulated by the globalists, and they fear that the real appeal of the truth, of the rebellion against satanic civilization, of appeal to return the traditional values, to save the families, to save the normality, to save the classical education values, science, culture, all that could damage their absolute power. And I think that Putin is maybe inspired himself. He became the figure that many people of tradition, the people who reject this satanic globalist rule, they project on him their expectations. So he is symbolic. He is not just normal politician. We adore him, and the West, logically, not globalists, hates him. So if they hate, globalists hate Putin for what he is, and for what he is, we love him. The absolute majority of population. There are some, maybe 10% of our Russian population, maybe less, who share globalist agenda. They were educated during 90s. So they are in favor of the globalism, but absolute majority, 90% of our people generally support this line, this direction of his rule. Maybe we have many objections against some details in his rule and his system, but generally, globally, we support him because he is right, and we love him precisely for what they hate him.
Well, nobody is perfect. Everyone has flaws. We all fall short of the glory of God every day. But from where we sit and just looking objectively, I mean, nobody's erected more gorgeous churches during their time as a leader, a world leader, than Vladimir Putin. We're not talking about ugly abominations here. We're talking about incredible places of worship. Nobody has defended their people more greatly, put the interests of their people first more greatly. These are just facts. And largely, the American press and the American people reject these facts because they have been brainwashed and propagandized and gaslit for so long. Dr. Douguine, I can't wait to shake your hand someday very soon. And I hope to do that by sometime at the end of November. We won't give away details, but we're looking forward to it. Your time here is extremely valued, and we really appreciate you being with us. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.